The storm howled across the desolate desert as Jack Colton rode into the forgotten train station. The air was thick with tension, the promise of rain never fulfilled. There in the shadows of the crumbling platform, he saw her, a young woman, disheveled, her clothes torn and her mind far away. She sat motionless, eyes lost in some distant memory, her fingers trembling as she clung to the cold, broken bench. Her presence seemed to belong to another time, a ghost of the past trapped in the windswept ruins. Jack approached her quietly, the weight of his past settling in his bones. He didn't speak as he reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph. It was stained with time, the edges tattered, but the image of a woman, distant yet familiar, was unmistakable. He offered it to her without explanation, his expression unreadable. She took the photograph slowly, her hands shaking, and as her eyes scanned the image, something deep within her shifted. The woman in the photo wasn't just a stranger. She felt like a part of her, a memory buried long ago. Tears welled in her eyes as the recognition hit her like a flood. She didn't understand, but the connection was undeniable. She opened her mouth as if to ask him why, but no words came. Jack simply watched her, waiting, before he turned to leave. His voice barely audible above the storm, he whispered, "Please don't cry." And just like that, he vanished into the night, leaving her alone with the photo and 1,000 unspoken questions, the wind carrying away the echoes of a story yet to be revealed. Emily couldn't shake the image of the photograph from her mind. Every moment of every day, it haunted her, like a puzzle she couldn't solve. The woman's face, familiar yet foreign, plagued her thoughts. She recalled an old childhood story her grandmother once told her, about a mother who had disappeared under strange circumstances. It was a tale shrouded in silence, rarely spoken of, but Emily felt an undeniable pull to uncover the truth. She spent days visiting the town's oldest residence, asking about the woman in the photo, hoping someone would recognize her, but every attempt ended in frustration. The answers were vague, and the locals' reluctance to speak only deepened the mystery. There was something about that photograph, something she wasn't being told. The more Emily dug, the more the town seemed to close in on her. People avoided her questions, offering only nervous glances or hurried dismissals. The pressure mounted as her frustration grew, each failed attempt pushing her closer to the edge. Just when she was about to give up, Emily stumbled upon a dusty old journal in the back of a second-hand store. The pages were yellowed with age, but the handwriting was clear. As she read, a wave of disbelief washed over her. The journal's entries spoke of a woman who resembled the one in the photograph, a woman who had been part of her own family, someone tied to the mysterious disappearance. Emily's heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place, but the full story remained just out of reach, like a shadow lurking just beyond her grasp. Emily's search for answers led her to a man who had once been close to Jack Colton, a man who now seemed like a shadow of the cowboy she had encountered. Dustin Hale was a weathered figure, his eyes clouded with secrets and regret. At first he was reluctant to speak, but after a few tense moments, he finally broke his silence. The man she had been chasing, the cowboy who had handed her the photograph, was no ordinary outcast. Jack wasn't just a wanderer, he was a fugitive, a man haunted by a dark past. Dustin revealed that Jack had been involved in an accident years ago, one that had claimed the life of an innocent person, a life he couldn't bring back. The revelation hit Emily like a blow to the chest. Was Jack a hero struggling with guilt, or was he a villain running from the consequences of his actions? As the truth sank in, Emily realized that her investigation had caught the attention of dangerous people, those who wanted Jack's past buried at all costs. She found herself followed, her every move scrutinized. Mysterious figures appeared in the shadows, watching her from a distance, their intentions clear. They were determined to keep the secrets of the past hidden, and they weren't afraid to use force. Emily, however, felt a growing sense of urgency to confront Jack, to understand the truth behind his actions. Despite the warnings from Dustin, despite the looming threats, she knew she couldn't turn back. She had to face him directly, to demand the answers she needed. With a mix of fear and resolve, she made up her mind. She would find Jack no matter the cost. Emily's heart raced as she approached the isolated ranch, the vast desert surrounding her like a suffocating barrier. The wind whipped through the dry air, carrying with it the scent of dust and loneliness. There, standing against the horizon, was Jack Colton. His figure was a silhouette, hardened by time and regret, yet undeniably familiar. She had found him. The weight of the photograph in her hand felt heavier than ever. She approached him slowly, the photograph held firmly in her grasp. Her voice shook as she asked him the questions that had consumed her thoughts. "Who is she? Why did you give me this?" she demanded, the pain of her unanswered questions hanging between them like an unspoken curse. Jack's gaze softened as he met her eyes, his voice low, almost as if he had been expecting her arrival. Jack took a deep breath, his weathered face etched with years of hardship. He knew this moment was coming, and he had been dreading it for years. "I never meant for it to happen," he began, his words filled with sorrow. He spoke of a tragic accident, one that had taken a life that had never fully healed the wound it left in his soul. He told her of the day the woman in the photograph died, a loss that changed the course of his life forever. But as his story unfolded, Emily's confusion deepened. Jack looked at her with regretful eyes, and his next words shattered everything she thought she knew. "The woman in that photograph, she's your mother." The world around her seemed to tilt as the gravity of his words sank in. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest as she processed the revelation that would forever alter her understanding of who she was. Jack's face crumpled with sorrow, and he dropped his gaze, as if the weight of his confession had drained him of any strength. "I knew from the moment I saw you," he continued, his voice breaking. "I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't. I couldn't bear to face what I had done, and I couldn't bear the thought of you knowing the truth." The pain in his eyes mirrored the anguish Emily felt inside. She had been living a lie, and now with each word Jack spoke, the world she thought she knew began to crumble around her. The realization that her entire life had been shaped by this secret rocked her to her core. Was Jack's regret enough to absolve him of the past? Was he the man she thought he was? Or was he just another person shaped by the tragedies of his choices? As the weight of his apology pressed on her, Emily was left to confront a truth far deeper than she ever imagined, one that would force her to question everything about her identity. The truth weighed heavily on Emily's shoulders, pressing down on her as she tried to make sense of everything she had learned. The woman she had been searching for, the woman in the photograph, was her mother, a part of her life that had been buried beneath years of unanswered questions. Jack's confession had shattered her sense of reality, leaving her torn between her anger at the past and her understanding of the man before her. He wasn't a villain. He was a man broken by his own choices, burdened by the weight of a tragic mistake. She saw now the sacrifices he had made, the regrets he carried, but it wasn't enough to change the fact that her mother was gone, and nothing would ever bring her back. The pain of losing her mother, her real mother, was something Emily would have to carry with her for the rest of her life, no matter how much she wished it could be undone. As the tension mounted between them, a new danger appeared on the horizon. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble with the approach of something far darker. Jack's past had come back to haunt them, and the shadows of his enemies now loomed over them like an impending storm. A man cold and dangerous arrived at the ranch, someone who had a score to settle with Jack, someone who would not be satisfied until justice as he saw it was served. Emily could feel the danger growing, the tension in the air thickening with each passing second. She knew she couldn't run from this. The decision before her was clear. She could walk away, leave Jack to face his past alone, or she could stand by him, face the storm, and help him confront the consequences of his actions. The weight of that choice was more than just a question of loyalty. It was a matter of survival. Would she abandon the man who had become a part of her fractured history, or would she fight beside him, even if it meant losing everything she thought she knew? The ranch, once a symbol of isolation, had become a battleground. The dry winds howled, as if warning them of the impending violence, the sky turning an ominous shade of red as dusk began to fall. Emily and Jack stood at the edge of the dirt road, their eyes fixed on the group of armed men who had come for him. Victor Grant, the leader of the group, stepped forward with a cold, calculating stare. His eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of Jack and Emily standing together, a stark reminder of the past Jack had tried to escape. "This is where it ends." Jack Victor's voice was low, filled with bitterness. "You can't run from this anymore." Jack's grip on his revolver tightened, his gaze unwavering. He had made peace with the fact that this moment would come, but not like this, not with Emily standing by his side. "I never wanted this for you," Jack said softly, his voice edged with regret. Emily's hand brushed against his, a silent gesture of support. She had chosen this path, knowing what it would cost her. The confrontation erupted without warning. Gunshots shattered the air, echoing across the desolate land. Jack moved with precision, instinct taking over as he fought to protect Emily from the growing threat. Each bullet that flew by, each shout that pierced the air, only fueled the desperation in his heart. He knew he could never escape his past, but he was determined to protect the only thing in his life that truly mattered. Emily, though terrified, stood her ground, refusing to back down. She had come too far to be a passive spectator in the chaos that Jack had brought into her life. Her eyes darted around, searching for an opening, trying to anticipate their next move. In the chaos, Emily saw a man approaching Jack from the corner of her eye, his gun aimed directly at him. Her heart raced as she realized that in that moment, Jack was vulnerable. He wasn't invincible. Without thinking, she grabbed a nearby piece of metal, an old rusted wrench, and threw it with all her strength. It collided with the man's arm, knocking his aim off. He cursed and stumbled, but before Emily could move again, the sound of another gunshot rang out. Jack ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding a fatal shot. Her hands shook with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This wasn't her fight, but it had become hers the moment she decided to stand by Jack. Jack turned to her with wide eyes, his expression a mix of shock and admiration. "You should have stayed back," he shouted over the chaos. But Emily shook her head, her face set with determination. "I'm not running from this anymore," she yelled back, her voice barely audible over the gunfire. In that moment, they both knew that there was no turning back. This was the final chapter of a story that had been written in pain, regret, and now, defiance. Emily moved closer to Jack, protecting him as best she could, knowing that the only way to stop the cycle of violence was to confront it head-on. As the gunfire continued to echo, Emily felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer, but the fight was far from over. The tension in the air was suffocating, and Emily could feel the weight of every second that passed. She knew that when the police arrived, the chaos would end, but the aftermath would leave them with more questions than answers. The fight wasn't just physical anymore, it was a battle for the truth to be heard. She had no illusions that things would ever be the same, but she couldn't stand by and let Jack's past destroy any more lives, including her own.